Hello, I'm Mass, and this is another Conquest Battle Report. Today I'm playing 100 Kingdoms vs 100 Kingdoms, and this is the third and final round of the Saskatoon Conquest Tournament event, whatever the fuck it was. I don't know, I traveled there, I drove 9 hours, and I played to win. So, round 1, won against Dweg. Round 2, won against Nords. Round 3, 100k is gonna win. Which one, you'll find out by the end. So, I'm going to take you into the list and we'll start talking about that. Here's my list, Horse Lord, and I'm probably going to do this really quick, just like the last two, because this is all I've been playing for the past 5 battle reports, and after this, I'm probably not going to play it again for a while, just because, you know, it's like, okay, are you going to watch the guy play the same list over and over and over and over again for like the next 30 battle reports? No, I'm probably going to go and I don't know, grab some Household Guard, grab some Longbows again, dick around with that. Maybe I'll just play Goblin. Maybe the next 30 game is going to be straight Goblin. This is what you really wanted. Just the sweet, sweet serenade of Goblin. But let's get into Horse Lord and I'll talk about it before we move on to my opponent's 100k list. The guy in charge, the Mounted Noble Lord. This dude's got the speed of horse supremacy, +1 impact, rerolling 6s on all impact attacks for all those household knights in my list. We got Oliphane's Roar, +1 clash, terrifying +1 on the charge. Then we got Weapon Master for that cleave 1, Tip of the Lance for that cleave +1 if you make a successful charge. This dude is sitting in the Household Knights of 5 stands. They're all veterans of +1 clash. This is just the buff bus. It gets work done, it hammers really hard, and it's great. It'll get through almost anything. There's like just under 500 points of horse in there, and I hope it does just under 500 points of work. Sometimes it does a little bit more. Then I got my 2 units of Mounted Squires. They're decked out the exact same way. Veterans, +1 clash, Standard Bearer, Court Palatine. There's only 3 stands there. Really great being speed 9. It allows me to get into that backfield really fast, get onto objectives really fast, kind of set that line of engagement, and also gets my opponent a little nervous because it's like, alright, it's defense 2, 3 with the shield, like, am I going to be able to kill this before it gets a charge clash into me? And you don't really want to be hit by the side from these guys because they have opportunists. So yeah, love me some Mounted Squires. Lastly in this warband is just an MSU of Household Knights with a Standard Bearer. These are my objective chuds. They sit on the zone, they get in the way, they become an anvil, a pinner, whatever I kind of need them to do, they kind of do. They have just enough survivability to be annoying, but not enough to like save them from anything really dedicated to kill. Then I got my prior commander of the Crimson Tower, which is Soaring Strikes. He's got the Supremacy of the First Blessing, which gives Blast to all my Order of Crimson Tower and Ashen Dawn that are in his warband. If you already got Blast, you either get +1 attack or Harden +1. I just go for Harden +1 because I'm like, ignoring Cleave, ignoring Brutal Impact, ignoring Armor Pierce, just getting rid of that keeps the Ashen Dawn alive longer, and the longer they live, the better for me. Then I got 2 units of Order of Crimson Tower and 2 units of Ashen Dawn. They're all 3 stands, they all have Standard Bearers, and that's the list. Order of Ashen Dawn run up, take a tank in the face, Order of Crimson Towers come around and hit him with the side hammer, and I just do the tank and spank of an old WoW boss. As you can tell, I've had to record 3 games in one day, and my god, we are disintegrating my own voice and body to get this game out. Let's slow roll those rules for you. Pause the video at any time if there's a rule that you want to look at, and if there isn't any, that's fine. You can even use the chapter skip, throw those in there. But those are my rules, that's my list. Let's go check out my opponent. Here's my opponent's list. They're playing August 19th. The mighty 100k list, August 19th. No one will suspect it. My opponent has an Imperial Officer for their Warlord. They got Armor Dominion Standard Steel. Brace for Impacted on your feet is that double time and +1 Bastion. Armor of Dominion, any stands that touch the character stand lose Cleave and Smite. Cool. Standard Steel gives Dread, what gets rid of Inspire to the entire regiment. And they have TAC 1 through 3, and this guy is sitting in this big blob, where is it? Of Steel Legion. So there's 6 stands, they're all veteraned up for +1 Clash, Standard Bearer, Drill Master. This unit's running up the table really fast. They got 6 attacks at Clash 4, and if they Inspire, they're rerolling 6s. So this is going to be a really devastating, hard-hitting unit. And I got to be careful about that because this is the unit that is going to start killing off Household Knights, killing off Crimson Towers, and putting a serious dent into Ashen Dawn. So I got to be careful how I deal with this. And the thing that's going for me is that everyone is faster than them on a charge. And that's what I kind of have to like bait. If I can bait them out into charging me and then hitting them with another horse, or if I can win the initiative and charge them before they charge me, that's also great. Next thing he's got is 2 units of men-at-arms with standard bearers. These guys are literally objective chuds that are just going to sit on the zone and score for him. So, yay! Then we have Hunter Cadre. Hunter Cadre are the Barrage 3 armor piercing, range 18, jack of all trades unit on 100 Kingdoms. This unit is veterans up as well, so they get +1 volley to go to volley 3. They have a stand bearer and a null mage. I have no wizards, so the null mage isn't doing anything. But this unit is very good at range and at melee because they're both volley 3 and clash 3. And they have armor pierce and cleave 1, so they're always going to be doing damage. They're not going to be benefiting from their feed hunter this game. However, I still have to be worried about them because they have... That armor pierce from the range is going to be really annoying into like Ashen Dawn, Crimson Towers, Household Knights, anything that I want to live, and I kind of want to get like a horse in them as quickly as possible so that I can cut them down and use my Bless to get rid of stuff. Then he's got a Mounted Noble Lord. They are Brutal Impact 2, Cleave 1, Impact 3, Shield, Speed of Horse. Like this is running the same thing I run. I'm just going to scroll down. There's the 6 stands of Household Knights, the whole buff bus, same thing I have, except they're running 6 stands instead of 5. Then they got a unit of longbows, that 24-inch range arcing fire armor piercing 1. That's really mean. I'm going to probably try and get a unit of mounted squires into them as fast as possible. Then I have... it's not in my list. I just play 100 Kingdoms so goddamn much. Then he has 4 stands of Merc crossbows. And then finally, 4 stands of mounted squires with veterans for that +1 clash and inspire. So his list is very generalist, but he has 2 hard-hitting anvils with the big bust of Household Knights and the big unit of Steel Legion. He's buffed the Steel Legion defensively so that if he gets in there and starts having a brawl, he can do it. He's got enough shooting with the Merc crossbows, Hunter Cadre, and longbows to kind of set up different threats of ranges. So if I ever get into the Merc crossbow, he doesn't really care if they die. If I get into Hunter Cadre, he can kind of fight back with that Cleave 1. Longbows are going to be shooting for basically the entire game, unless I get something into them. And then he has the 2 men-at-arm unit as objective holders, as well as he can run them forward to just be meat shields and pinners and anvils for all the other stuff. So overall, it's not a bad generalist list. I kind of like it. It has bits and pieces of really good stuff, and we'll see how my opponent plays it. So let me just slow roll their rules for you. Pause the video at any time to see if you want to read anything that I haven't gone over. And yeah, that's kind of it right there. Let's go look at the scenario. The scenario we're playing today is Divide and Conquer. Kind of hard to see up there. This is just me taking a picture of the folder. So we have 6 scenario elements, as you can see here. They're all 6 in zones, and then we have the 2 objectives that are friendly and what is it? Enemy. I'm just going to circle better, so you know there's my opponents in blue, and there's mine in red. Players gain 3 VPs for destroying the enemy's objective marker. Okay, you get 2 VPs for each objective zone you're seizing. You get an additional 2 if you're controlling 3 or more. You gain an additional 4 if you're seizing 4 or more. And you get 2 for the warlord. So it's really all about holding these zones and getting to 3 or 4 of them. Probably 4. So if you can control, I'm just going to draw a line. Like if you can control that, you're good. You're winning the game. The thing I have a question about for this scenario is players gain an additional 2 if they're seizing 3 or more, and they gain an additional 4 if they're seizing 4 or more. So are those, like, do they stack? Or because once I score 4, I'm getting the 4 VPs, so it's like doubled? Or like, you know, what's kind of going on there? So would I get 6 or would I get 4 if I'm controlling 4 or more? That's kind of my thing there. I'm not really sure because the language doesn't state that very well, and I'm not a huge fan of bonus points for getting more stuff. The bonus points is that I've secured the zone for the 2 extra points, not the bonus points of, okay, you have 3 zones, here's an additional 4. Like, I've mentioned this before in the scenario episode where, like, the catch-up mechanic is really hard because either the rich get richer, or if it's like drawn out and tied for so long, once they knock you off one of those zones, like if this person came in and knocked me off here, and we were fighting over those 2 middle zones, and they secure that. So I'm just gonna cover this in the blue. The rich just kind of get richer, and they just push you off. And there's no way to come back, or your initial lead doesn't matter. And it's, I don't know. I don't like the bonus points that much. Is what I'm kind of getting at. Overall, it's not bad. I kind of like this one. Another big issue I have is that the objectives themselves, like the A and B there, they're too far back. I really want to see them. I'm gonna use purple. I kind of want to see them 6 inches forward, truthfully, so they're more relevant to each other and to the table, so that you can actually go in and kill them. Because if you are controlling, use purple again, if you're controlling these zones that I've circled a bunch of times, it's a lot easier to go another like 6 inches over to score that objective than it is to like go to a foot, and you know, you're probably looking at like 15 inches to go from that zone all the way across that objective. And that's the thing, like the objectives are too far back to be relevant, I find a lot of the time, and I would like to see them closer. It's kind of like, I like to see a lot of the scenario elements actually closer to the middle of the table. There's reason to fight and there's reason to hop between the other scenario elements as you win a battle and push your way across the table. And as you're doing that, you're scoring the scenario elements that will then get you into that point lead. So it allows armies that rely on scoring more points early on to kind of win games, because the armies that win later on, they just use the catch-up mechanic and just completely outscore their opponent in the last like 2 turns, maybe last 3 turns, while the first 6 to 7 didn't even matter at that point then. 2 points for the warlords is kind of fine. I don't really mind that one that much. And yeah, that is the scenario. For terrain, I don't mind this. No, there's some good spots for terrain. Like you can put terrain here, you can put terrain in between each of the zones. Because there's 6-inch zones, you actually have a lot more space to put terrain that's kind of relevant and in the way. And yeah, this is scenario 1. Yeah, I don't mind Divide and Conquer. Has some issues, but overall it's pretty good compared to some of them. Let's go look at the table. Here's the table. And I'm going to circle the zones again, just so it's easier for people to know where they are, because they're those clear ones, and they're really tough to see if you're not moving around and looking for them. Like, the one I just circled here, like, you can't even see it in the picture. Like, you can barely see it. I think you can see it. I'll use red. You can kind of see it right the edge right there, and it's, like, really tough, too. And it's also really tough when you're actually playing on it, because I'd have to, if I was standing, let's say where this chair is, I'd have to move over here and then, like, look with my eyeballs. Draw my eyes. Yeah, that's how my eyes look. And then I could see it from the side. Once again, the objectives are back. So we got my friendly Dwag objective, and I think my opponent has their friendly 100k objective over there. Still using the same terrain. I've actually swapped sides on this table. And one thing I can say about it is that there is about here, I'm drawing this red line, it bends towards me. And so I rolled my dice once in this area from like that line down, and they didn't roll very well. Like I rolled a ton of 6s. I'm like, I don't like that. I was having better rolls on the flat table. And so I just proceeded to roll all my dice basically like in this area or in this area, like when I'm circling, just because it was flat. And it was just like, all right, this is not going to be doing weird shit to me. Maybe it's just all in my head where I feel better, so my dice are doing better, but like whatever, right? Like I didn't like roll it on the slanted table. What else is there? So for terrain, we have size 2, hindering, obscuring, obstructing forests, right here and right here. My opponent tries and uses, I'll use purple again, this forest against me, but I kind of bait them out and kill them. And then we have the size 4 garrison that my opponent throws some more crossbows in at some point. And then we have the size 2 obstruction and the size 1 obstruction. This size 2 obstruction actually kind of gets in my way a couple times just because I'm trying to skirt units like around it on that side and trying to get like around here. So that size 2 obstruction was actually relevant when I found it nice. That forest that I circled was kind of nice. This garrison was meaningful. The other forest, nah, not so much. And then the size 1 obstruction didn't really come up. So At least a bit in this game, terrain was more relevant, but it was kind of like us trying to get around it, and maybe I'll use it a little bit against each other. However, there's still like the clear zone path of just like right there and right there, like these lanes. However, you do have to bend a bit if you want to go, no, not this one so much, like if you want to start getting for these zones. You can still kind of get there, but it's not super straightforward, so it's a little bit better. And with that, that's kind of the table. Let's go look at turn 1. Here's turn 1, and I get my mounted squires onto the table. My opponent gets their 3 lights, so their hunter cadres over here, their longbows over here, and their merc crossbows. I believe I win the, no, they win the roll-off, and they use their vanguard supremacy from the Imperial Officer, which gives them another march when they first come on the table, to just shoot these merc crossbows way up the table. So I'm like, okay, that's where you're going. I don't really like range units in garrison terrain because it allows them to fire 360. So I immediately put my mounted squires across from him and just kind of run right up the table. My opponent sees that, walks his longbows onto the table, checks for 24 inches, shoots, and does a bit of wounds to my mounted squires. And I'm like, yay, turn 1 doing great, got some turn 1 shooting. And then my opponent just runs up the hunter cadre here just to kind of not lock down that zone, but, you know, get them forward up the table and start looking at where to go. They don't move them super far up the table because they're worried that another unit of mounted squires is going to show up and then just like charge them. So he kind of keeps them a little bit back until he sees where the next unit of mounted squires go. What's a smart move on his part. Overall, it's start of the game. We're just vying for position, and we're going to see how the game pans out starting at turn 2. Here's turn 2. And I get a couple things on the table. I get my second unit of mounted squires, and I get my MSU of household knights. My opponent for them gets their unit of mounted squires and 2 units of men-at-arms. So first things first, my opponent gets the whirl off, puts the merc crossbows into the garrison here. Just gonna circle them, and I'm like, sweet, mounted squires go. They charge into the garrison, do a bunch of damage. I think I kill off like, I don't know. I don't get my impacts. I think I kill off maybe like 2 stands or something and then resolve. Like I think there might be 1 stand left, but I'm really locking them down and just kind of like, get out of here. My opponent then just starts slow rolling his stuff. He kind of like has the hunter cadre move up a bit. He still doesn't know where those second unit of mounted squires are going, so he's very conservative about them. What I understand, they're a very good unit, but you don't just want them to die randomly. Like mounted squires will just run over there and be like, let's go. But he needs them forward so that he can get his men-at-arms, as you can see, into that zone. So I'm just going to circle it again, so he's scoring that. And then his other unit of men-at-arms eventually comes on the table and scores that, so he's getting his 4 points there. I then go, I believe I throw my household knights up here, across from his men-at-arms, and score that zone for 2, so I'm at 2 to his 4. And I know when other stuff gets on the table and I start killing things, I can lock down more zones, but right now he's getting that scenario lead, and I'm not really expecting a fight on this side of the table where the purple is. I'm more looking at a fight on the rest of the table. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. He then runs up his mounted squires, as you can see here, because he's looking to kind of charge in, kill off my my mounted squires. I just run up my mounted squires, as you can see right here, my second unit, and they're really there just to see what his mounted squires do. And I just stayed, I think, just a hair out of his 24-inch range, so he has to move to shoot me. But I'm still forward enough that if his unit of mounted squires comes forward, I can go deal with it with my second unit if he wants to charge my first unit. And if he doesn't, then my first unit's just going to kill the guys in the garrison, and we're going to go from there. He then shoots me with his arcing fire over the objective and over his, I'll use green script, over like his mounted squires because he didn't have a very good range. Or not that he didn't have very good range, but he didn't have very good line of sight, so he just takes aim and shoots and does some more damage into those mounted squires. I'm like, okay, cool. That's turn 2. Just, he's establishing his point lead. He's setting up that line of engagement. He's being very conservative, see where my stuff goes. Like, he's seen the other 2 games and what I've been kind of doing. So he has like an idea, like, he's got to watch out for the Zash and Dawn. He's got to watch out for those household knights, but they're not on the table yet, and he needs to know where they're going before he starts really committing resources. So turn 3, you're going to see him start committing his serious resources towards those things. So let's go have a look at that. Here's turn 3. And I get my buff bus of Household Knights and my Ashen Dawn on the table. My opponent gets their big block of Steel Legion with the Imperial Officer, and their buff bus of Household Knights on the table. I believe I win the roll-off, and I have this unit of Mounted Squires immediately go and attack the Merc Crossbows, and I think they're now down to 1 stand and 1 wound, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. He then... Does he dead draw some cards? I'm not exactly sure if he dead draws some cards, but I'm kind of like, whatever. But I know for sure he has these longbows over here, just kind of go and shoot these Mounted Squires, so they're down to like 1 wound and broken, and I'm like, okay, whatever, I'll just, like, we'll find out who wins the initiative and who fights between the Merc Crossbows and the Mounted Squires. He does have his unit of Mounted Squires were back here in the middle, charge into my Mounted Squires, does like a wound or 2, and I'm like, okay. I then clash back, and I think I do just 2 wounds. I didn't roll very well here, but I got some damage on, and I'm trying to hopefully kill at least 1 stand, maybe 2 stands before he gets to activate them again next turn, and that'll allow me to win this fight. And then at that point, it's kind of us drawing random cards between each other, like he draws his Men-at-Arms, doesn't move them. I draw my Household Knights on the left there, don't move them. Actually, I just moved them back a little bit, because I'm planning to put Crimson Towers right here. He moves, draws his Men-at-Arms, and we're drawing like characters back and forth, so we're kind of like trying to dead draw each other out. And eventually I just move up my Ashen Dawn right here. He sees that, moves up his Hunter Cadre just within range and starts shooting at me, does a little bit of damage as you can see right here. And then I just move my Household Knights up because I'm looking to score this zone right here. And if I put a threat projection of Household Knights there, he will have to either put something in response or start looking that he's going to start losing stuff, and I don't think he really likes that. So in response, he runs up his big block of Steel Legion to sit on that zone as well and to go fight my Household Knights. So now it's kind of like, who's going to get the charge off, who's going to get into who, and we're going to see that for the next couple turns. He then runs his big bus of Household Knights over here, and I think he's looking at swinging around to get into this zone and kind of killing off my 2 units of Mounted Squires, and maybe even potentially just running this way and getting to this zone. However, I don't have my entire list on the table yet, so he still has to be careful. But he is in the lead here because he's now, not now, but he's set that board space. I now am finally bringing all my horses up. He's shooting with his guns. He can kind of play conservatively, but he has to be careful because I am faster than him, and I am going to just like try and do march charges to get in there and tie up his guns and tie up anything that I can successfully kill next turn. So with that, I score 2 points there and there, gets me to 4. My opponent scores 2 points there and there, gets him to 4. I'm 2 points down, and we're going to find out what happens on turn 4. Let's go have a look at that. Here's turn 4. First thing that happens is the Mounted Squires here rally, kill the Merc Crossbows in that garrison. They're all dead. And they just turn right, like they just reform this way. My opponent, what does my opponent do? You do something. I think they have these Mounted Squires go and clash into me, but I make a lot of my saves, so I'm not too phrased, and then I just roll really hot. My opponent rolls not so great, and I break and shatter the unit, killing them. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool, sweet, they're dead. And then I think I just move outside of like longbow range, and I'm like, okay, come get me. His longbows in retaliation shoot and kill off this unit of Mounted Squires, so they don't have to deal with that. And like, that's fine. And then the rest of my list kind of comes on the table, as you see, and let's talk about what my next thing is. I have my Ashen Dawn on the right side here. Just do a march charge, get into the Hunter Cadre, and just do some impacts. I think I kill a stand, and then he clashes back, and I just bless it off. With them gone, these Crimson Towers move up into the zone and score it for me. Good job, you guys. My opponent, realizing that he has Household Knights across from him, Crimson Towers across from him, and Ashen Dawn, who are going to be fighting Hunter Cadre and Men-at-Arms, needs to do something with the Steel Legion. If he moves up, he's in a kind of a crappy spot where my Household Knights will then kind of charge and do a bunch of damage. So to limit my impact attacks, he just side shuffles twice. Actually, I think he side shuffles 3 times because of double time into the forest there. So if I try and hit him, I'm gonna have to try and do this like weird charge where I swing this way and then charge in to hit here and draw that box so that I have less of my stands in the woods to still get my impact attacks. But he needs to march charge me to tie me up. I need to roll like a 3 or a 4 or something with a reroll. It's kind of been my favor. I'm fine playing chicken with him on the zone because eventually the Ashen Dawn on the right side are going to kill Hunter Cadre, going to kill Men-at-Arms, and just swing around anyway. And I've secured that middle, so I have a lot of horses coming for the Steel Legion unit. And he needs to kind of pick something. So is he going to be preemptive or not? We kind of go back and forth a little bit. Like, you know, he just dead draws Men-at-Arms here, and he just moves some Men-at-Arms up here. I dead draw Household Knights at some point because they're fine sitting on that zone for the entirety of the game. I then start bringing on everything else. His Household Knights are beside that tower, and I'm like, okay, how am I going to deal with them? Well, I can run my Ashen Dawn up and get myself in the woods, and he's going to have a very hard time trying to do what I'm going to do to him on the right, because the majority of his stuff is going to end up in the woods if he tries and charges the Ashen Dawn. So I can sit there if he decides to charge me, but if he stays where he is, I can then just charge and pin him with the Ashen Dawn and then just get into a slap fight. And the only thing that has cleave is his Mounted Noble Lord, so it's not a huge amount coming through anyway. And then I can slowly bring the Crimson Tower over the next couple turns in, deal with these Men-at-Arms, and deal with these Household Knights at my own leisure. And that's the plan there, and that's what ends up happening. And that's really it for turn 4. Like, I've killed off his forward stuff. I'm starting to push into him, and I'm putting him on the back foot where he's now playing even more conservatively and trying to use any little bit of terrain and advantage he can to stop the horses from coming. So let's go to turn 5 and see how that went. Here's turn 5, and I'm going to talk about the left side first. So at some point in the game, I have my Ashen Dawn. They go and do a march charge, and they engage the Household Knights my opponent has. They didn't do any impact attacks because they moved through hindering terrain, and they don't get any clash or cleave or anything because I had to march charge to get there. However, I have 2 stands in here. Oh, I think last turn he actually scored 1. So last turn he did score this zone for an extra 2 points and then the bonus of another 2 points. But now he only has 1 stand in and I have 2 stands in, so I'm scoring that. That's why he was sideways. And I move my Crimson Towers up, as you see, over to here. Threat projecting towards the Men-at-Arms, who will have to march charge me, but they're Men-at-Arms, so I'll just beat them to death. And also being able to either pick Household Knights or Men-at-Arms at my own leisure. And then I just move the Household Knights up here to score that zone and to keep anyone out of it if they somehow break through the Ashen Dawn and Crimson Towers. So this side, now that the Household Knights aren't charging, is very much more in my favor. So I'm like, okay, sweet. Next thing what goes on, I have my Ashen Dawn on the right side there. They kill off the Hunter Cadre, as you can see, and the Men-at-Arms instead take their place. I think I bless off the Hunter Cadre, and then his Men-at-Arms actually just roll really well, and I just roll garbage, and I lose one of the Ashen Dawn. I'm like, oh no, but it's not the end of the world. Like, I'm gonna win this fight eventually, and I'm just gonna take that zone. But right now I'm out of it, and my opponent is still scoring it. What's good on him? Fight your opponents outside of zones, just on the edge, so that you could keep scoring it as you go. The big thing that happens in this game is that we have the Imperial Officer here, and his unit Steel Legion. My opponent decides to do the march charge, and he needs like a 3 or a 2 to get in to my Household Knights, what you can see right there. So he says, I'm gonna go for it. I'm like, okay, so you march, and then he's like, I'm gonna do with a reroll. I'm like, okay, cool. He's not gonna attack the Household Knights, what's like fine. I was gonna lose my majority of my brutal impact and cleave and everything anyway. But I did have that side unit of Crimson Towers that would come in and hit them. And I was probably gonna kill off a majority of the Steel Legion, but then he'll have some live and he can hit me again next turn. So he rolls and he fails the roll and ends up just in front of this Household Knight. And he's on the zone, and I'm like, okay, well, my Household Knights are going to go. They are going to charge you, But because of Armor of Dominion and, what is it, Banner of Dread, I don't get my Inspire, and the front 3 stands don't get their Cleave or their... Oh, no, they do get their Brutal Impact, because it's specific. Armor of Dominion specifically calls out Cleave. What's not the end of the world, so it ends up being like 3 attacks with Cleave and a bunch of other attacks without Cleave for the Clash, and then, but all the horses hit with Brutal Impact, and I hit them, and I think I kill off like 3 of the back stands, and I'm like, sweet. And then my Crimson Towers here, who are on the zone, activate, charge in, do Brutal Impact 2, and then Clash. Only one of them is out of Armor Dominion range, so the other, I think one of them gets like their Cleave attacks, one of them gets a supporting Cleave attack, and the other one gets nothing, and then it's like, did enough damage to break and shatter them, because I had to just kill off, what is it, like 2 more stands? So I think there was 4 in the front. Yeah, because it's like a character, so 3 and 5 out of the 7, so they just break and shatter and run off. And I'm like, okay, sweet, there we go. And they're dead. Now I no longer have to worry about that hard-hitting hammer. And it's like, okay, I can put these Household Knights to score this zone. That's really good for me. I can think about putting these Crimson Towers back into this zone to score it next turn. That's good for me. Ash and Dawn are winning that fight on the right side. It's Men at Arms versus Ash and Dawn. Like, they were never gonna win to begin with. Like, don't throw Chaff at Ash and Dawn. They're meant to kill Chaff. And the last thing I do is I have these Mounted Squires do a long bomb charge, like just march charge into the longbows, and on their impacts they kill a stand of longbows. I'm like, sweet. And my opponent activates and uses these Cleave 1 and kills off one of the Mounted Squires. But it's like, I don't care, they're tied up. Mounted Squires are probably going to win that fight if I just keep attacking, and if they don't, I can throw some more horses at them. So right now I just got to get everything back into the zones, clear up the last little bit, and I can score to win. So right now I'm scoring 3 zones, getting the bonus for +2, and my opponent is scoring 2 zones. And let's go to turn, oh, what is this? I believe this is, and this turn right now is 5. I think they'll see turn 6 or 7. We're gonna go look at turn 6. Here's turn 6. I declare this as my Supremacy phase because I don't want to get Cleave 1 into Ash and Dawn, and I'm just gonna use the Harden to stop that. I believe my opponent wins the roll-off, attacks with Household Knights. I bless everything off and take 0 damage on the Ash and Dawn on the left here. And then I just go back and hit them a bunch with their Cleave 1 attacks, and I kill off a guy or 2. Like, I know this stand's dead, another one might be, and it's like, okay, we're sitting here, but I'm still in the zone, I still have all my guys, I'm still winning that fight, scoring it, good. My opponent then triggers his Men-at-Arms. I'm like, okay. He then does the long bomb charge and gets into the Crimson Towers, and the Crimson Towers like, oh, okay, sure. And I think he might have march charged in just to keep me out, to prevent from the brutal impact. But anyway, Crimson Towers, as you can see, just clean up those Men-at-Arms and kill them all off. I just Inspire Clash, kill them all, like just secure the win. And I can go and get the zone in the Household Knights next turn. Like, everything's still pinned there. I can do this at my own leisure. Then his other mounted, or not, his Men-at-Arms here, they go fight Ash and Dawn. Ash and Dawn just kill them off as well. And I'm like, alright, just Inspire Clash, secure the kill. Because I have control of the board, everything is locked down, and I can just get into these zones and win at my own time. And you can see that where I just spin around the Crimson Towers 180 and just walk them back into the zone. I move my Household Knights around a little bit just to go look at the longbows, if the longbows ever clear off the Mounted Squires. And I'm scoring 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the longbows and Mounted Squires fight. As you can see, there's 1 stand of longbows left. Like, they're not meant for this world. And that's really it for turn 6, because I'm just kind of in that cleanup phase, get onto the zones and score them to win and just carry it out. So let's go look at turn 7, and that'll probably be the last turn of this game. Here's turn 7. I believe he wins the roll-off. Household Knights attack the Order of Ash and Dawn. Yeah, again, I'll just circle this with red. There's a bit of wounds on them. It's fine. Ash and Dawn activate, kill them. I think the longbows try here and fight the mounted squires, but didn't roll very well. Mounted squires kill them, and then I side charge the objective, but I don't roll anything good for my impacts, but I'm engaged with it. And then the rest of my movement is zone, 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 scoring all 6 elements, getting what, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 12 plus 4, 16, and if the 3-pointer also stacks as 18 points in one turn, like, that's it. That's the game. Let me show you the points, and I'll do my in-game chat and talk about the tournament, like, overall. Here's the points. As you can see, my opponent scored 20 points. I scored 48 together, and it's turn 7. Ta-da! So, 100k won, I won, and that's 3 wins to 0 losses for myself. So I win the whole thing. Yeah. Things about this game, as I get the chance to play more of the same thing over and over again, I kind of see like where the weaknesses are and what to do to cover it, and improve upon the, like, not improve upon the list, but improve upon my play with the list is what I want to say. Each game, I feel like I made less and less mistakes with it. Like, I don't get a ton of games in a month, and I really just played this list because it was easy to play for me. It's very quick, it's durable, and I can start putting pressure on my opponent so that they feel like they need to make suboptimal moves to help themselves out. And because it's faster, I can kind of dictate the flow and get into things quicker than maybe my opponent would think I could. And I use like a march charge a lot of the times with the Ashen Dawn, just because I'm like, I don't need wedge with them to win fights. I need them to set that line so I can get the other things that need the charge to be successful. And that's what happened throughout the game. My opponent's list didn't have very many anvils. The things that would be anvils would be those men-at-arms, but they weren't going to last long enough to really hold so that the House of Knights and Steel Legion get to work. I feel if my opponent really wanted to go for it, he should have put the House of Knights and Steel Legion on the same side of the table to support one another, and then kind of ran it as a big swing, like a big swing door, as the Merc Crossbows, the Hunter Cadre, the Men-at-Arms are just kind of holding off as long as they can, and then have the Steel Legion and the House of Knights kind of swing around, hit stuff and kill it, and then push themselves across the table so that it eventually rotates 90 degrees for both players, and then they're fighting through the middle part of the table instead of like from each player's side. I think that would have worked well for my opponent because he was using his Men-at-Arms more as objective holders than anvils or pinners or speed bumps, and I was like, okay, well, it's open season. Like there's nothing in my way to get to the juicy range bits. There's nothing in my way to get to the Steel Legion bits. There's nothing in my way to get to the Household Knight bit, and those are the things I want to hit and kill. And if Household Knights aren't charging, especially in that big block like buff bus, they're not doing a ton of damage. Like they might kill stuff eventually just through sheer volume attacks, but they're not doing that like brutal impact 1, like 4s rerolling 6s on the impact with terrifying, and then 4s at cleave 1 on the clash. Like they do so much damage if they charge, and you really want to set that up. So the tournament itself, I had a great time. I had fun with each of my opponents. I would 100% go again. I drove 9 hours and I had a great time. Yeah, I don't know. I'm happy with my play. I'm happy with how I did. Like I fucking won, so yay. But I hope to do some more traveling. Either go to people's locals events and play, go to bigger events like Gen Con and Adepticon. Like I'm already planning to go to Adepticon for next year. That'll be super fun. And play more games against people who I don't get to see and see what they're doing in their meta. A lot of the event people were like, hey, hindering terrain, if you touch it, you lose all your impacts. I'm like, well, no, that changed in the May update so that half your stands have to touch it. Like, half or more have to touch it for you to lose all your impacts. So, a thing I want to bring up is, like, check the rules online, because a lot of the guys are, like, pulling out their rule books. So I'm like, no, man, you gotta check the PDF online. A lot of this has changed, so I would put more value of the online PDF, because, like, in our modern day, a lot more things are going digital, and a rule book is one of them. Like, the Parabellum Conquest core rules, I want to say gets updated at least a minimum, like, every 6 months, so if you haven't played in a while, or just like, just kind of have a look at it. It's free. You can just pull it up on your phone, check it, and be like, oh, okay, cool. BonkTable even has a podcast episode about it, so if you really want to know, you can listen to us, or listen to Mike and me talk about it. Yeah. I want to thank the people I played in Saskatoon. I had a fun time, guys. If you watch these battle reports, I hope you had a fun time as well. And if any listeners or viewers are interested in more BonkTable stuff, we got a YouTube channel. We got a podcast, link in the description below. We got a Discord, link in the description below. And yeah, hope everyone enjoys themselves. Have a great day. Bye.